Hello, sir. I'm Pranjal Jaiswal from Startup Lanes. It's really great to have you here, sir. And I would please request you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Pranjal. My pleasure. I'm the CEO of Bharat. I have been in the fintech universe for now last couple of years, but before this, my background was consumer. I launched and scaled the FMCG business for the RP Sanjeev Goenka group, and before that, had spent a bunch of time in McKinsey. Was an associate partner at McKinsey when I left. I belong to Delhi. I love sort of early stage companies and therefore sort of invest in a bunch.
Wonderful, sir. So my first question for you is, what is your investing philosophy?
Yeah, it's quite simple at one level. I only invest in things I understand. So therefore, a lot of the investments tend to be in the consumer space, consumer tech space, fintech space, and a bit into B2B businesses. And the second philosophy is I need to like sort of the founding team which is building it. It is not only about pedigree of the founders, but sort of clarity of vision on what they are trying to build and sort of my own sense of assessment on are they in this for the long haul or not, right? So as long as it's a idea in the space I understand, and as long as I get convinced by founders' vision and sort of staying power, then rest is sort of a simple process for me.
Very nice, sir. So my next question is, what has been the most important investing lesson you have learned so far?
So I think my biggest learning, and that's why I only invest in spaces I understand. I've also made money in a lot of investments where I didn't understand the sector, but a lot of people were investing. So I, for a lack of a better word, did a FOMO check. But like I think I do a lot of this for excitement and fun, and to be able to help entrepreneurs and to be able to learn from them as well, right? Because you think you are going to teach them something, but most times you end up sort of learning from them. If I don't have that excitement with a company, and that can only happen if I like the founder, I like the sector, and I have a personal interest in the sector. If those conditions are not met, no matter whether the startup does well or poorly, I don't get sort of personally excited, right? So I've sort of stopped doing that and started focusing on things which I can sort of contribute value.
Yes. So which has been your best investment to date?
It's difficult to say what is best. Yeah, I think company I like or companies which are sort of now big. Some of the big companies I invested in are Mamaearth, is Rupeek, which is sort of a gold loan business based out of Bangalore. Mamaearth, most people now know it's sort of a large consumer D2C brand.
Yes.
But I think there are tons of other investments. Whether investment makes money for me or not is immaterial. I think where I get most excited by is sort of founders solving tough challenges, right? And to that extent, for example, when Mama started, now it seems like a simple story of DTC, which a lot of people are doing. But at time, the big question was DTC cannot scale, right? Like everyone had said, DTC, yeah, interesting. Maybe it can become a 100 crore company, right? So, but that time, sort of solving for it was sort of very exciting, and how to build it large was very exciting. Today, there's this company I really like called Billora Cosmetics, which is sort of trying to build clean label and really high quality clean products in the cosmetics space, right? Again, very difficult problem to solve, because in cosmetics, the most important element is how do I look after applying, right? Clean is a secondary thought. And to deliver high quality fashion and sort of look and feel while keeping the product clean is a very interesting sort of product challenge itself, right? So that's sort of very exciting. Then I'm sort of invested in someone who's trying to build a product or a credit card for influencers, and these are sort of people who all earn enough money, but no one wants to give them a credit card because there is no sort of recurring salary, right? So again, a very interesting problem to solve on how do you social proof it, how do you sort of write them for limits, etc., etc. Right. So I think if the problem is exciting, I enjoy it. But from a sort of a financial reward point of view, I would believe sort of Mama Earth and Rupee are two outliers.
So it's like the excitement that drives you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my next question is, can you share any investing mistakes that you have made and the lessons we can learn from them?
No, yeah. To be honest, I think some of my investments, which have also not made money, I wouldn't even in hindsight call them mistakes. I would still invest in them. I think one thing I learned sort of very early is like space needs to be exciting, and the founder needs to be exciting. And I think I have sort of stuck to that discipline throughout. Right now, some of these companies may have not really scaled because they lost investor favor because of some external conditions, or a sort of a high capability founder could not execute in the right way or could not build the right company culture. I don't think I would have ever been able to understand that before investing, right? So I would still have, if I even invest today, I think I will make the same mistakes I have made throughout. But this is eventually investing, right? You are not expecting every investment of yours to turn to a commercial success. Sometimes it's about backing things you believe in. Sometimes it's about backing founders you believe in. And you hope that some of them will make enough money to cover for whatever you've invested, right? So I would still stick with that thesis. Though I've sort of done many investments, for example, in a couple of investments in the cloud kitchen space, which I thought was a very exciting space, and Indians love to eat, and Indians love to eat out. They didn't scale because I think all investors probably got worried that everyone from Zomato, Swiggy, etc. is sort of launching their own cloud kitchens, and therefore they may not for a new player. And in hindsight, very easy to say, but when I did the investment, that was not the case, right? So it's a bad investment in hindsight, but I'm still reasonably sure that after all these learnings, if I would have come across the same company 3 years back, I would have still invested.
Yeah. So, is there any particular investor or author who had a significant influence on your investment perspective?
Of course, you learn from a lot of people, right? So, I learn a lot from sort of a couple of my friends at Sequoia who sort of have a very nice way of sort of evaluating deals, and it's also like sometimes you find some things exciting, but the question is it worth taking the risk today, or would you rather wait and participate in the next round, right? Some of this thinking sort of I learned from people at Sequoia. Some things I learned from someone like Kunal Shah. I mean, like, it's a very simple philosophy. Jo bhi sector mein I understand, any good founder who comes to me, I will write a check, right? Like, he sometimes, I joke with him that he doesn't even do any diligence. He usually decides the check size. And to be honest, I think that's a fair approach as well, right? So, like, why choose? Like, if you like the founder, you understand the space, and you can help him, you invest here. Like, sort of structurally, probabilities will work out for you, right? So, again, like, I learned from someone who used to back every McKinsey founder. And it was not McKinsey people are better suited to run startups, but it was, I know he's ex-McKinsey, he's made of the same DNA I am made of. I can by and large trust all McKinsey people on ethics, etc. And these are sort of important ingredients of an evaluation, right? So if I, on an average, back every McKinsey founder, structurally, I will hopefully at least make money, right? So I think some of these things you start learning over the period of time, and you start picking from investors. But eventually, everyone's investment thesis is their own, right? So I over-index founder conviction because I believe धंधा तो सब बन सकते हैं. It's about who will be smart enough to understand what is working, what is not working, keep changing the business to basically scale what is working, and not lose too much money in things which are not working, right? So and equally importantly, every business goes through cycles, right? There are good times, there are bad times, there are investment cycles where everyone wants to give you a check. There are times where market is tight and no one wants to write a check, right? So can the founder persevere through all the bad times, and can he keep his calm and not let sometimes success go to his head, right? So if you sort of deal that, then it's sort of a that's my thesis, right? It's not necessarily learned from someone, but it is sort of drawing inspiration from a lot of people and their investment styles, and adding your own personal touch to it.
Yeah. So, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs seeking funds?
Yeah, I think my usual advice to founders, I think it's very important on who you are getting on the cap table. I think, and everyone goes through this, and now I've been having seen so many investments I've done. I think sometimes people over-index valuation. Uh, Sometimes people over-index simplifying the cap table and having as less names as possible on it. Sometimes people over-index the size of the check they are raising. While many of these are important, but to me, especially at an early stage company, who is the investor backing you and what value can he add to your business is sort of the only question I would sort of give highest priority to, right? So, of course, there can't be ridiculous terms for you, but I think if I get right set of investors around me who can guide me, who can coach me, who can open doors for me, and sort of at least let me get the minimum viable product out to the market, and show some initial proof of success. Valuation, check size, etc., can be sort of figured out over the later rounds, right? Because in the beginning, it's not about raising a big check and a big valuation. It's about raising enough to get your product out there and sort of prove that the idea works, right? And in fact, sometimes I believe raising at too big a valuation early on puts you at a disadvantage, because if your minimum viable product is not really developing the way you want it to, it sort of puts the company at risk in the following rounds, right? So, so I think that's sort of my advice. Choose carefully who you're getting on the table. Like, figure out who are the people who are relevant to you. Reach out to them versus take money from anyone.
Yeah. So, do you invest in specific sectors? If yes, then which are they?
Yeah, I do only invest in consumer tech, and like consumer, it includes brands and marketplaces, etc., and financial services. Right? So whether it is alternate lending, whether it is payments, whether it's insurance, and sometimes I do sort of invest in B2B businesses, especially SMB focused B2B businesses, because that's something which I understand deeply given the Bharat Pay sort of experience. Outside of these sectors, no matter how good the idea, how good the founder, I stay away unless it's a founder who's my friend, and of course your friend you will back. Not because I don't sort of think the ideas are great, but only because if I'm not able to add value to you, there will be better investors for you, right? So, so I would sort of tend to stay away.
So, what are your views about the startup ecosystem in India?
Developing very rapidly, and I think we've obviously had as a startup universe, we've had great last couple of years, and like, I do think the momentum is sort of likely to continue. Even if it doesn't, I think everything goes through cycles, so it will sort of come back. I think what has happened with companies like Zomato, Nykaa, Policy Bazaar all going public, it's sort of increased both the confidence on the sector. It's increased sort of people's ability to invest into India. Like, international funds are now getting, because they are now seeing actual exits happen. And it's also helped you sort of get talent excited about the opportunity, right? Because 3-4 years back, a lot of people considering startups will say, ESOP, yeah, it's never going to materialize into any real money, right? Now people understand it can realize into real money and sometimes very big money. And that sort of made it lucrative to a lot of employees who don't want to necessarily start something of their own, but want to see that excitement of an early stage company, right? So I think both from a talent point of view and an access to capital point of view, we've come a long way in the last 2-3 years. And even if there is sort of a down cycle, I don't think we are ever going back to the 3-year-old version of it, right? Temper down capital, maybe capital deployed maybe 50% of previous year, but I don't think we are ever going back to like 3 or 4-year-old version. And I think the excitement of people to join the startup universe is now here to stay.
According to you, what is more important? Team, idea, traction, etc.
Team, yeah. I over-index on team, as I already said, especially early stage, right? What is important is different at different times of journey of a company, right? In the beginning, the only two things which matter are what is the space you are going after. Because I do believe that great businesses are built on the back of tailwinds. You can't be saying I'm a great founder, but I'm going to build a very exciting business in a category I know 10 years trend is going to shrink, right? So if you get into the right space and you have a great team, you have to then back the team to figure out what works and keep on changing sort of, it may mean 5 pivots, right? Like very few startups end up exactly is the way they have thought on day one, right? Every company goes through pivots, and which is natural, right? Paper pay, no matter how much exercise you do, you can never really get to what will work in the market. And I do believe sort of a great founding team becomes a great startup because their ability to take these calls and pivot as and when required tends to be higher, right? So when I look at investing at like seed stage or Series A stage, I over-index the space they are in and I over-index the founding team. Obviously, a later stage investor, if you're doing a Series C, Series D, great team is not going to cut it unless there is not even an MVP, which is sort of at least shown meaningful traction, right? But at the stage we are talking angel investing, I think I would like team is sort of the biggest metric I look at.
So, what is the value addition that a founder gets along with your investment?
It's a function of what founder wants. Yeah, to be honest, I think I also know that I come from a school of thought. जो धंधा बना रहा है उसी को सबसे ज़्यादा समझ आता है, right? So I don't think I will understand a founder's business ever better than him. The value I can add can be as simple as sort of making the necessary introductions for potential business, for potential fundraise, for sort of potential vendors who can help you build some of the legs of your product. The other value sort of I can add is sort of having gone through this journey myself and now twice over. I have faced many of the challenges which a lot of the founders face as they scale their business, right? And their answer may be different than what my answer was at that point of time, but it's sometimes useful to brainstorm with someone who sort of faced similar challenges, right? And hear the other person out. Eventually, you may decide and do something very different, and I will still back you, right? But sometimes it's just important to have a sounding board who's sort of gone through that journey himself and can give you his advice on what worked for him and what didn't work for him, right? So if you can learn from my mistakes and not repeat the same ones, that's sort of more than enough for me.
Yeah. So what, according to you, is the perfect time for a startup to raise funds? Concept, very early stage, growth stage, or stable stage?
Yeah, I think it is different for every startup, right? It depends on what kind of capital do you need. To prove your concept or get your MVP out, you need $1 million. Then probably the right stage to raise is at the concept itself. If your MVP is going to only cost you like 20, 30 lakh, 50 lakh, which may be true for a lot of consumer businesses as they launch or brand type products, then I think it's better to launch when your first set of products are ready and you're willing to sort of invest performance marketing money behind them, right? So I don't think there is sort of it's both what is the right stage to raise and what is the check size to raise, right? So both are sort of very heavily dependent on what business you are building. In tech, you need large amount of capital upfront typically, unless it's a B2B business, right? So it's a B2B consumer tech business, someone is trying to build a Nika type marketplace. Not raising very early on or raising a very small check is not helpful, because you will not be able to do much. You will not be able to get even enough consumers on the platform or excite enough brands to list on your platform. Like I would theoretically say you need a minimum $1 million seed, right? But if someone is building, let's say, a DTC brand in a category which has high gross margins, then either you raise slightly later or you raise a much smaller check, right? Like you can very easily in a couple of crores get the product ready, hit the market, get to some 20-30 lakh rupees of sales per month, and get some repeat behavior going and some product feedback going, right? So that you know when you raise the next check, what to change and how to quickly scale, right? So I think both how early and what part of your journey you raise a check at and how big a check you raise varies so much by sort of which sector you are in and how sort of the founder wants to play. And sometimes it's also a function of access to good capital, right? If a great investor is coming and saying, I want to write a check today, you are not going to tell him that, oh, no, sorry, it's too early. 2 months later, I will come back to you, right? Sometimes is when, like, if you have a list of these are my top 5 priority investors, and if one of them writes a check to you, you would take it, right? So it's sort of a highly sort of dependent on multiple factors, some of them not even in your control.
So would you like to share any of your recent investments and why did you select them?
So I think we briefly talked about Billora. That's I love that company because it is trying to solve for something which is unsolved in the clean label space, right? Trying to get cosmetics products out which are good for your skin is very tough, right? And I do sort of believe the founders are going about it in the right way. Ainara, I know personally as a founder for many years, and she's sort of leaving no stone unturned to sort of get the right product out. And it was very tough for her to get the angel round in because, like a lot of people said, yeah, who cares about clean in cosmetics? But that's not true. You look at globally, if you look at Honest Company, it's a $1 billion company today. It's clean label cosmetics, right? So that's sort of very exciting, and now she's really cracking it. She's sort of raised a larger round from sort of Sequoia after that, doing really well. The other company I again briefly talked about is Pixel, which is sort of building a credit card for sort of influencers. Again, a very interesting problem to solve. And I think there's this third company I like sort of, which is called Tortoise. It's again in the fintech space. We talk a lot about buy now, pay later. We've launched our buy now, pay later as Bharat Pay. He's building something which I classify as pay now, buy later, which is like, you want to buy an iPhone 12 months down the line. Why don't you start saving for it right now? And if you're doing that, I will give you sort of a discount on the iPhone, right? It's great for you because you're getting a discount. It is great for the brand because they're getting a short sale at some point of time. It's sort of helping both the brands getting their customer acquisition costs low and getting a short revenue. And it is helping the consumer by giving them sort of great deals if they have decided to make the purchase, right? So I find something very exciting in the wave of all this buy now, pay later. Someone is sort of trying to build pay now and we will get the product much later, right? So that's sort of very exciting. And so I think these are the 2-3 I've sort of done recently.
So my next question is there anyone you would like to thank for supporting you in investments?
A lot of the VC community actually. They've sort of always been kind in in discussing many of the opportunities with me, getting me into their deals, and sort of having a patient ear to me when I sort of try and connect them to some of the founders I've invested in. But I think most of all, the founders themselves, yeah, I think I have learned so much. I think, and I said this in the beginning, you feel that you are going to add value, but when you have like 60 investments like I do, and you speak to each of the founders, even let's say once a month, sometimes once in 2 months, you hear 60 points of views, right? And that sort of enriches you so much that a lot of times your business you are solving for day to day, and you're not thinking big picture. It sort of forces you to think big picture, and many of those things then you can sort of translate into changes at your own business, right? So I'm very sort of proud of all the founders I work with or I've invested in, whether they've sort of become big or not. But I think from most of them, I've sort of learned something very useful for myself.
So, what is your feedback on startup?
My feedback on startups?
Startup lanes.
Startup lanes. I think you guys are doing a great job. Yeah. I think sort of taking out time to recognize large angel investors. A long time. I think a lot of us don't do it to make money. It is most of us have sort of enough money to not care about incremental money. A lot of us are running large companies which we've sort of built where no matter how much money we make elsewhere, it will always pale in comparison with what is at risk or what is value at stake in our own startup. So a lot of us sort of do this to help sort of the entrepreneurial network in the country. A lot of us do this to help sort of entrepreneurs learn from our mistakes or learn from what worked for us and sort of scale their businesses. And this is sort of financial performance is sort of a lot of people know because you say, oh, Kunal Shah was an early investor here, or so was an early investor here, and they've made tons of money. But no one sort of really recognizes the effort and what it is taking away from each one of us, right? Every minute spent on a startup is 1 minute taken away from your own business, right? So, so I think you guys sort of are doing a great job of recognizing all of that, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you, sir. So, first 3 slides that you look into a pitch deck.
I only look at the team page, and I only look at the what are you trying to solve. I don't even look at a third page, right? So I think these are the only 2 pages which matter for me.
Nice. So how would you define a startup?
Yeah, again, like everyone will go through their definition of it. I think to me, a startup is a company which is still fast evolving and does not know at least 60-70% of the eventual how the product will look like, right? We've figured that, and it's only about and once you've figured that, and once you've figured out your go-to-market strategy, and it is just about scaling it year after year, to me a company sort of ceases to be a startup, right? So Zomato is not a startup for me any longer because they know what they are building, and like now it's only about scaling that, improving the operating efficiency and making money out of that, right? So Policybazaar is not a startup, Nykaa is not a startup. I think these are sort of large established companies. Mamaearth to me is not a startup. It's nowhere close to listing yet, but it's not a startup because they know what works for them, and they're all about like now continuing to build the brand and continuing to scale. BharatPe is somewhere in the middle, right? Like our core business, we know what we are building and we know how we are scaling it, but we are just venturing into the consumer side, and that part of the business sort of operates as a pure startup versus the BharatPe is a bit more oiled machine, and it's about just scaling it. Right. So to me, a company, once they figure out the core product and once they figure out the go-to-market, like I wouldn't call it a startup, whether it's profitable or loss-making.
So my last question for you is, what are the attributes of an entrepreneur?
I think there are 2-3 which matter. One is perseverance. That's very important. Like you may be lucky that your first 2 years are great, like, but luck will run out at some point of time. You don't build a startup for 2 years, right? So I think one is perseverance. The second to me is like, I don't know what's the right word to call it. I call it sometimes humility, but it's not actually humility. It's more to do with your ability to listen and take feedback, whether it's from your consumers, whether it is from your investors, whether it is from your team, and course correct, right? Because if you're too rigid, you may be incredibly lucky that the first idea you thought played out and worked out exactly the way you thought. But that's one in a million. Most businesses need to undergo like 5-6 pivots before they really figure out what works for them. And to be able to sort of absorb those pivots, you need to be sort of have your ears open and be willing to listen, right? So, or you need to be coachable, right? Everyone needs coaching. I need coaching. You need to be sort of coachable. I think that's sort of second. And I think the third is sort of you need to be bold and aggressive and sort of have a large vision. And I don't mean aggressive as a negative term. You don't have to like shout at people. You don't have to like fight your way through every situation. But aggressive in mindset, right? Like khod denge, kuch bada banayenge, right? So that type of thinking. Unless you have sort of that passion, if your aspiration is to build a 100 crore business and then sell it and retire, it is highly unlikely that you'll build a 100 crore business. If your aspiration is to build a $1 billion company which is profitable, hopefully you will get there. At a minimum, you will build a 100 crore business and sort of sell it to someone, right? But if your starting point is sort of not aspirational enough, it's very difficult to keep yourself motivated every day and sort of go after that, right? So yeah, to me, perseverance, ability to listen and take feedback, and sort of aspirational and aggressive.
Okay. Thank you, sir. It was really great to have you here. Indeed, it was a fruitful session, sir.
My pleasure. Take care, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.